On to Class 2A, which in my estimate is maybe the toughest bracket to choose.
It's all over the place.
I have this themed as the Battle Royale because this is, tiny little side note real quick is I know that something that's very close to your heart popped into my head when I was thinking about this because I have written down last man standing, which I know is a wrestling term in pro wrestling, the last man standing. And I looked up and I was trying to remember if that's the term I was looking for, if it was Royal Rumble or what I was referring to. So I type in types of wrestling matches. I go to the Wikipedia page. Kevin, the info box was this big. I mean, there was 80 different types. And I was like, well, I'm not going to read this. I mean, it was like 12 of them just alphabetically in A. But I do believe last man standing is what I'm looking for because there can only be one. There can only be one team. And yet I feel like there's about 7 or 8 teams that could win this. And dadgummit, if you didn't convince me because you were singing this phrases this weekend. Going into their game against Beggs, you told me you were like, I really like Victory Christian. And
I told you they had only one loss. I didn't realize that they had lost to Cassia Hall. So they actually have 2 losses. But
okay. Well, you also outed yourself as the one person who keeps voting for them #1 in the AP poll. You unmasked yourself. Or I guess I outed you now. But they finished, I believe it was 6th in the final poll, but I really think that they are better than that indicates. I mean, that's a Beggs team that on their best night, I feel like is the best team in 2A. Mm-hmm. And they held them to whatever was 26 points and really held them down defensively for most of that game. And it's so unfair that some of these games, I mean, the fact that you have Vian and Beggs in the second round potentially, the fact that you could have Washington and Jones in the second round potentially, and I feel like I'm probably just, like a broken record from things that we probably said a year ago because all these teams were good last year and some of them are probably even better. Don't sleep on Community Christian. Don't sleep on OCS. Mm-hmm. Don't sleep on Metro Christian because they've done it twice. You brought up a really good point, and this is why I say it's not fair. Marlowe is having an incredible season. They're giving up just 9.2 points per game. Their quarterback, Jace Gilbert, if you want to talk about players, I mean, look, no one player carries a single team. But, and this is not to take anything away from the rest of Marlowe because that defense is outstanding. You know who doesn't play on that defense? Jace Gilbert. But he does everything else. At quarterback, he's thrown 19 touchdowns to 0 interceptions, 84% completion rate. I mean,
that's insane.
You might look like I look at their, by the way, shout out to Jason McPherson from the city of Marlowe, who works for Marlowe Public Schools and actually keeps really in-depth statistics and sends them to us each week. Really appreciate it, Jason. But, being able to dissect, if you look at their offensive stats, nothing pops off the page necessarily. It's not an air raid offense. Their best running back, Julian Mariquin, got hurt, I believe, week 4, a pretty bad injury. He's back now. But I don't think they have a rusher over 500 yards. As a team, I don't think they've rushed for more than, 1,600, 1,700 yards. But you think about how many quarterbacks we watch in a season. How many quarterbacks, I mean, we have seen plenty of quarterbacks that struggle to complete half their passes, plenty of quarterbacks that struggle to complete 9, 10 passes. Jace routinely would go 10 of 12, 11 of 14. And by the second half, they're not throwing, so it doesn't matter. And when I say that this guy can carry a team, he's also one of the best kickers and punters in the country. And that, I feel like, is the most outstanding statistic. If you're going to look at any statistic as to why Marlowe has dominated people, and I understand their strength of schedule isn't quite what we thought it might be. Anadarko hasn't been what we thought they would be. Comanche was so-so. Frederick wasn't what, they were a year ago. But Marlowe, nearly every single kickoff of Jace Gilbert's goes in the end zone. And his punts, their punt average, I believe he's averaging 37 yards a punt. The opponents are averaging 27 yards. You do the math. The average starting point of each possession. The opponent is usually starting on their own 20. Marlowe's starting on their own 44. That is just a huge swing for a team. If you only have to guard, if you only have to go 60 yards on the field versus 80, that makes all the difference in the world, especially if most of your guys are bigger than the other team. That tends to help. Marlowe, again, why it's unfortunate and unlucky, they're going to have to play a really good Chandler team for the second straight year, probably in the second round. And then they probably get Victory Christian. And man, after beating Beggs, how can I pick against Victory? I really don't know. They're obviously battle tested. They've beaten one of the best teams in the state that, like you said, they haven't lost much this year. I think Victory actually ends up playing. Again, when I say battle tested, the fact that Metro Christian finishes third in that freaking district, I actually have it might as well be, a district party for them, because I have all three of those teams, Victory, Metro, and Beggs, making the semis.
I do too.
And okay, so I'm not crazy, or not for that reason. And I have Washington coming out of that lower bracket, and of course Washington #1 in the state, but similar to Marlowe, you're like, okay, being undefeated, does that make you better than a team that has lost to a good team? I think Washington actually loses to Beggs. I have Victory playing Beggs again in a rematch of the title game.
Okay. I have pretty much the same Final Four as you, but except I take out Washington and put Rejoice Christian in there. I'm really impressed with what they've been able to do. I think they beat Washington in the quarters. And then I have Victory Christian beating Metro in a very close game. I don't think it's going to be whatever that crazy blowout they had earlier. I think Metro gives them a closer game. And then Beggs, I have beating Rejoice Christian again. They met earlier this year, and I think it was like 74-48 or something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But and then I have been voting Victory Christian #1. I really like what they've been able to do. They even played Verdigris close earlier this year. However, we've talked about it earlier this year. Like, when is Beggs going to finally break through? When are they going to finally win that championship game? And since that game was so dang close, and they were stopped inside Victory Christian territory there late on Saturday, otherwise they might have a chance to win that game. I think Beggs wins the rematch. I said it earlier, it's hard to beat a good team twice, and I think Beggs finds a way to finally get it done against a very good Victory Christian team. And honestly, the only reason why I'm not putting Metro Christian in the championship game and beating Victory in that rematch is because the Beggs Metro Christian game was so close. I would have to go with the it's hard to beat a good team twice.
Yeah.
And that too. So that means I would have to put Metro Christian winning the championship. And I just don't want them to win for a third year.
Yeah. Well,
I want somebody else. It's Beggs time.
You know what? You convinced me. I had Victory Christian plugged in there, and now I'm like, man, it is hard to, swallow up that really good offense twice. I think Beggs can win it, and I think they will win it. I think it's really tough to win a state title, but it's also really tough to have your heart broken that many times and not get better. And I feel like, with CJ Brown and Malik Bogart, they've got just a whale of a team, and that's I think it's going to be really tough to beat them a second time.
Audio Jungle.